Vihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Shivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Yashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jana Vallabha Shivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Shivaradhari Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Please, my downwards to all Vaishnavas. Hare Krishna. Hey Balram, can we start with Mangalachar, please? Om Jnantimirandasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobheshtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadavaitam Savdutam Prajna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kant Radha Kant Namastute Apte Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhascha Kripa Sidhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaur Tvishe Namah Namo Brahmandevaaya Go Brahmanataya Cha Jagadithaya Ishtaaya Govindaya Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Sunday Feast Lecture. We will start today with the auspicious occasion of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. So let me share my screen. So today happens to be a very auspicious occasion. Today is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. And I may put together some slides. So as you know, he's the Acharya in our Parampara system and going all the way up from Prabhupada to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to Gaurkishore Das Babaji and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we'll all chant wherever you are. If you want to unmute yourself or even otherwise, let's chant the Pranam mantra for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidanand Namne Gaur Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varaite. It means I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sachidanand Bhakti Vinod, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of the Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Okay. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a pioneer in Krishna consciousness. As we know, the Bhakti movement happened in India about 500 years back. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his big army of people all the way from spiritual world. But after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the planet, sometime after that, there were some great acharyas, they were there around. But about 1700s late, things had kind of died down. And there was two kind of problems. One is that the movement was losing its influence. First, it was losing its momentum. And also it was getting adulterated influence from Sahajiyas. Sahajiyas are people like who cook up things based on your own concoction. So regardless, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as you know, the philosophy is very, very pure, and it was all going down. So it's actually due to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that he kind of restarted the movement, and that's why he's also called the seventh Goswami. And he not only did that, he also talked to the intelligentsia. At that point of time, um, the only literate people or kind of educationally advanced people in India were from Bengal, and the British were trying to rule India, and they thought that they will come and demoralize people, Indian people, and because they're poor and they were backward or whatever. But they were very astonished when they found out that Indian people had very advanced legacy, both culture, philosophy, and everything. So they found a compromise between the Britishers and the so-called literate people in India were mostly from Bengal, where they found impersonalism to be the common ground between them. And because of that, they kind of these people from Bengal became the literate people, the intelligentsia in India. And this is what was found in sync with the Western philosophy and religion. And because that was impersonalist aspect of doing things, that was obviously not in line with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it actually came up to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to not only go like a single one-man army against them, but to convince them. So he basically taught the intelligentsia of his time. And the great thing was he did it all single-handedly. And he proved the relevance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy and his teachings to modern society, which is very difficult, right? Because a lot of people would think that, oh, it may not sound very intelligent, it may not sound very logical, but that's what his relevance did. To his credit, he decimated some great anti-stalwarts of his time. There was the mystic Biskasen. He claimed that he was God. He had very great mystic powers, and he claimed that he was the incarnation of Mahavishnu. And the district magistrate at that point of time, or collectorate, whatever, he wanted to capture him, but the local people not allow it. So that person went to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to say, "Can you help?" And he went there and helped, and he captured this person, put him to jail. So this person had such great mystic powers that he caused the family of Thakur Mahasaya to fall sick, and even he himself got fever, and everything else happened. But he was so steadfast, fixed on what the true principles of the philosophy were, that he did not budge from his place, and finally he decimated him. Long story short, I mean, basically that person died after he could not use his mystic power anymore. Then there was this Charandas Babaji. He actually kind of practiced uh, Krishna consciousness, but his own version of it. And Srila Bhakti Thakur did not approve of it. So he would actually go and told him that this is the right thing to do. And after some time, Charandas Babaji actually agreed to it. And then it is said that after 3-6 months he left, and then he also ultimately couldn't sustain himself in this world. So two great people. So basically, in brief, Srila Bhakti Thakur is getting to the purity of what is to be, what the philosophy is, what has to be practiced, etc., etc. Then the king of Puri used Jagannath's money for his own enjoyment. So Thakur Mahasaya went there and solved that. And then Bankim Chatterjee, us coming from India, freedom struggle and all of those times. These were the great people when I was studying in school and college, right? We used to look forward to them. And as it turns out, when I'm reading the philosophy now and what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, it looks like that he wrote, because he was one of the intelligentsia, that Krishna was just an ordinary person. And we all know that he's not, right? He's not an ordinary person. So Srila Bhakti Thakur went and established that too. Then amongst, I mean, he has so many things to his credit, but I would say if there is one that stands out really, really, amongst all that stand out, is just finding the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. It said that he got Mahaprabhu in his dream and he transferred himself to that place near Bengal. He studied maps and he figured out a place. And then one day he was actually there on the opposite side of the bank and there was a lightning that fell. And he went and tried to figure out there's a palm tree there. And then he went and researched that. And then people told there that this place is useless because only tulsi leaves will grow here. It doesn't matter what we grow there. So he immediately figured out that, oh, this must be the great place. But then he wasn't very convinced still, or rather he was convinced, but he wanted to establish it without doubt. So he had consulted all the maps, these physical aspects were there, pratyaksh pramana. But then what he did is he got so he got Jagannath Das Babaji, was the head of the Vaishnavas that time. And Jagannath Baba was very old, he couldn't even move. He used to be carried in a basket. But when he came there, it said that he just couldn't control himself. He just jumped from his basket, started dancing. And then for a person who's 140, 120, whatever years old, to do that, he couldn't even open his eyelid. He's so old and so weak in his body that he suddenly got the energy. So that was it. Bhakti Thakur was absolutely convinced that from all points of view, this must be the place. So then he established that, and that was the important place, like very important event in his life, and obviously our lives too. And his daily routine is stands out, right? If you look on the left hand side, this is his daytime. He starts at 7 a.m. with correspondence, studies Shastra at 9:30, and then he would have his bath and prasadam. So only took half an hour for both bath and prasadam. So like things to learn for me. But anyway, from his 10 a.m. all the way till 5 p.m., he would actually do the core duties. He'll refresh for 1 hour. And then the 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., write the Shastra. So far, so cool, no problems. It looks like normal, right? I mean, a little out of order, but that is great. But then this is where things stand out in the night time. From 7 p.m., he'll have his second bath and prasadam. But then he'll rest for 2 hours. That's it. This is when most people watch TV, or some people who are into Krishna conscious might try to do other activities. But then that's when he's resting. But look at what he's doing after that. He's writing, and he's translating Sanskrit to Bengali. He's writing other books, and then he would rest from 4 a.m. to 4:30. So just 2.5 hours of rest in the night time, and then a little bit of rest here in the daytime. So 3.5 hours all that he got, and from 4:30 to 7 he chanted. So this is the amazing part. The 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. when you write, that's the time when he really moved the things around. He's like a bulldozer who moved the spiritual environment of this planet. So he wrote many, 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 many books. Rather, they said hundreds of books, and many books stand out. His Shranagati, his Krishna Samhita, his Krishna Kalpataru, Tattva Sutram, Jaiva Dharma, just so many of them. So with that, I think we can quickly end the Bhaktivinoda Thakurji's section. So we can all say Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki Jai. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being part of the lineage. Thank you for helping re-establish the parampara. And please help us in our continued efforts toward Krishna consciousness. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, so with that, we can end the Bhaktivinoda Thakurji section. And then let me go on to the other presentation that we have today. So we'll be talking about our other topic today. And so this other topic for today is that we're trying to read the Bhagavad Gita chapter 1. And we all read chapter 1, right? But as you can see in this photograph that is there, when you're traveling around the horizon, you're going from one mountain up the other mountain, come down in a third mountain. So Bhagavad Gita is called the Kunji, key book, formula book, right? It contains all the formulas for the entire spirituality. And if you really want to get more information about things or elaborate on things, not go necessarily deep, but wide, horizontally scaling, then we need to refer other books. And today's focus would be on trying to connect to Bhagavatam and see how certain very obvious concepts or simple concepts of chapter 1, but which may leave certain questions, are very vividly and very distinctly answered inside Bhagavatam. So we'll try to connect the dots, pick up small little items from chapter 1, and then we'll go ahead and see what Bhagavatam has to say to that. So towards that, here's the structure for these slides. On the left hand side, as you see, there's a slide. Hey, Balab, you can see it, right? So
Yes,
there's a
Prabhu.
slide identifier and there's a verse reference. So this slide identifier will tell what is this slide about. Okay, this is the structure. And here's the organization. So what you've done is taken Bhagavad Gita chapter 1, and this is just a sample. We are trying to establish, is this one of the ways to connect the dots between Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam? So we'll take the Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 and divide it into section groups and then into sections. And for each section, we'll take an aspect and then jump over to Bhagavatam. So this icon that we see over here is a section group icon. And here, this without the lines is a section icon. Then the categories. So each section is further divided into multiple aspects. There is a horizontal reference from Srimad Bhagavatam or Shastra. For today's efforts, we are only going to do Bhagavatam. So this book open will tell you that whatever is being presented on the slide is coming from Bhagavatam. Then at subsequent slides, you might see this balanced rock icon. And this basically tells an analogy, a metaphor, or a simile from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, there are like so many quotes, right? Prabhupada said the sun shines in multiple parts, but doesn't mean the sun is all over, right? It's not divided, things like that. So we'll take analogies. Then we'll develop our insight. So while we're not trying to go deep, vertical depth into what really was meant. So we're not going like Acharya has already done that. We're going wide, but there'll still be insights because that is what Krishna consciousness is all about. You get all these relations and insights. And the fourth icon is the practical example icon, and we'll see how that helps. So with those four things, and that's where I would request everyone to jump in and give their own understanding of things. So with that said, let us go on to chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So as we know that Bhagavad Gita starts with a conversation or dialogue, and it is a dialogue between Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra, and it is also a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. But this is what is getting reported. So as you can see on the icon on the right hand side, it's like a telecast of what's really happening on the television studio of Kurukshetra. So the very first verse starts with Dhritarashtra Vacha, Dharmashetre Kurukshetre Samveta Yutsava Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kim Kurvat Sanjay. So that's a question Dhritarashtra is asking. It's the only time Dhritarashtra really speaks in the entire Bhagavad Gita. So what it says is, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assemble in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So, and Bhagavad Gita is really, first chapter is laying the foundation for what really they did. So now we're going to divide this chapter, as I said, into sections. So as you can see the icon, observing armies is the first section. In Sanskrit, this is called, what is it called? San Nirikshana Yoga. So San is armies, Nirikshana, observing, reconnaissance, yoga, as you know. So there are three sections to this: preparations for the war, signs of victory, and how Krishna became Bhaktavatsala of Arjuna. Then there's a second group, Arjuna laments, and this is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Prabhupada has not used these terms to divide chapter 1 and chapter 2, but a lot of other Bhagavad Gitas have, and you can use that term, although the chapter name is still called, what Prabhupada said, Observing Armies, which is San Nirikshana Yoga is equivalent. And other 5 sections underneath that. Arjuna laments due to compassion. He says, I don't want to fight because I am the lone enjoyer. Fear of sins, destroy family traditions, better die than win. So it comes out of all of these sweet logics that kid come up with saying, I don't want to do homework. Anyway, so with that, let's jump on to the first group, observing armies, and that the first section, preparations for war, and what does Sanjay say as a reply to Dhritarashtra? Jastva to Pandavanikam Vyudham Dronasya tada. So the keyword over here is Vyudham. The Vyudham is basically he's asking what is the formation, how are they arranging things, right? And that is a key question that we're trying to solve over here. That what is a viewer? So a viewer is supposed to be an arrangement of army division for a specific objective. It basically goes like the management principles today, the SWOT analysis, right? The strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. That's what people are doing today when they want to establish a new initiative or try to reinforce one that is there. Very similar to that, in those times when the war used to happen, these formations would be there. And people would try to figure out what is the view, what is my formation, so that I can actually win the war today. So and it is very dynamic in nature. How is it dynamic? It's not like I am going to fight in a triangular fashion. And so what happens if this wing breaks? No, it's very dynamic. There are so many elements to it. There's a whole science behind it that it's very difficult for us to comprehend. But in a few minutes, let's go and see about that. So one thing is, how do you communicate? Because that time they didn't have walkie-talkies or cell phones or things like that, right? So they'd use drums. The drums will be called nagaras, or they use trumpet and or horns and things like that. And there's one person who's playing the nagara, but the ones over there were actually much bigger, and they would be carried on top of elephants' backs, and you would beat them, and that way the entire army division's formation would know that how to change itself. Now you might say, well, how often would they really need to change in the course of the day? Well, if Arjuna attacks on one side, they would need to change every 15 minutes because Arjuna would demolish that side, right? So that depends on what is the current formation, what are they experiencing, things like that. The other very important things where this drumming and sound and communication was needed. Let's say Arjuna Shastra Varunastra, right? Now the Varunastra is still coming in, and please note we are talking about formations which is spread over 20 miles, right? I mean, that is the kind of size that Kurukshetra war was fought in. 11 extraordinary armies, not millions, like really millions and millions of people over there, right? So really, by the time Varunastra crosses over and comes down, Bhishma has to know about it, come out with a counter it, and tell everyone to take temporary precautionary measures, and then tell that everything is good, right? So for that, they would actually blow horns or conches and then inform, and Bhishma would come up with that mantra and then counter it with his arrow, and then the people will spread apart and move away, so there's minimum damage to the Kaurava side and vice versa. So it is very, very dynamic, and how things used to happen over there. But this is what the view is about. So the very first day, Pandavas went with the Vajra. As you can see, the red colored shape over here, a Vajra is a club, Gada, that Bhima used to have, and Duryodhana used to ride. All of these are elephants over here. All the Rathis and Maharathis, Rathi Maharathis would be in there. We've sailed with the front, like the very cap of the Vajra. So that was the formation that Pandavas did on the very first day. And in reply to that, Kauravas did Sarvotmukhi Dandavu. So what's a Dandavu? Dand means rod. So it's a rod, and there's a rod over here, and you can see all the elephants over here, and all of this cavalry over here. But at the very head, it would be like a bludgeon, a sharp pointed thingy, and they would have every mouth will have one special person over there. And Duryodhana as the king or the leader would be at the back, but you can see Kripacharya, Bhishma, Dronacharya, they'd be at the head. So this is what rammed into Pandavas on the very first day, and that was the war. So this view had to be designed a day earlier by knowing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, etc. Well, so we're talking about viewers. This looks very simple, right? But then there's a lot more to it. Here's an example of a really complex view. I mean, you really have to put your imagination into play over here. It's called a chakra view. So there'll be 7 layers of people over there. And let's say someone attacked from this side, right? And they would go in. So what happens is, so if they would go in, then some people over here would counter them, and then they'll just move off. So this chakra is actually moving around in a circle, and then let's say someone comes and attacks, right? So someone battles him, and then they battle him for 5, 10, 15 seconds or 2 minutes, and then these people move off, and the chakra will move, and the next set of people attack him. So what happens is this person who's come out from, so let's say, Pandava's army or Kaurava's army, is now meeting different sets of people as the chakra progresses, and he's going in and in and in, and like a whirlpool, he's getting sucked into the center. That person is getting tired, where the people from the defending army never getting tired, because they're attack, move. Next set of people came, attack, move. So it's such a smart way of formation that ultimately the person who attacks gets totally sucked in the center. And by the time when this reaches the center, then all of the people suddenly turn around and they will all smash him. So this is one of the very complex views that was there. Abhimanyu was caught in this one. Yanam is telling me Abhimanyu is caught in something similar. And it looks like he's the only one who knew how to break this. So that's why I went in, but he didn't know how to come out. And there were similar other formations. There's a crunch view over here. It is called heron. It's like a bird that has its wings spread out and with outstretched beak. And there's a mandala view. This is the mandala view. Can you go to mandala view? Okay. So this is like the constellations, right? And star constellations. So as you can see, it's defensive in nature, U-shape. Someone attacks, they will get inside and before they can really touch one of the sides, right? If they want to break one faction, they'll still the other faction will go out. So this is a defensive view. Then this is a makar view. Makar, as you know, is a fish. Is it not a shark? Or it's crocodile formation. So it looks like a fish because I think there's a sizing in this window. But you can see Karna is here, Shakuni, Kripacharya, Luka, Shalya. So this basically, the mouth is the part that sucks in and eats people. So they'll open up wide, eat the opponent, and then close their mouth. So something like that will happen. And there's a Ardha Chandra view, very similar to the Mandala view, but this is basically defensive in nature. And Arjuna is in the center. But other than that, anyone else comes in, they have to now counter all of these people. Here's a box view called the Shakata view. And the Shakata view is like an open box. And then in the box, the Duryodhan is behind, and all of these other Rathis are at the front, right? So it's open. So they're really like a big thing. It's like the Alexander's army that's going in, and they would have these big lances, right? And you cannot cross it. So you cannot ever reach Duryodhana. And here is the Suchi Mukha view. Suchi is the needle, and it is like the needle, you have to pin it, right? So this was used to protect Jadrat. If you recall the story, Jadrat actually killed by illegitimate or immoral means Abhimanyu, and therefore Arjuna had promised that he will take revenge, right? So, and if he doesn't, then Arjuna will self-immolate himself. So Jadra was put right there behind, and the Suchi Mukha will go so that he's farthest away from Pandava's army. And then all other Athimarathis were protecting him. Karna, Shalya, Ashwatthama, Kripa, Bhurishrava, and Virasen. And Kritvarma was the very top, right? So Jadra was the very back. So anyway, so now we talked about the formations. We learned about what the views are, and we also talked about somewhat analogies in trying to learn this first section, right? The preparations for war. So the preparation for war, here's one analogy that Duryodhan gives about Bhima. As you know, Bhima was a great fighter, right? Bhima and Arjuna were the best fighters, literally, and at least on the part of that, they were the best, right? So he's comparing Bhima to Bhishma and to say he's like a fig. So these Duryodhan's comments. And what a fig means, it's a English phrase. It basically means that he's useless. Compared to Bhishma, he's nowhere, he will not be able to do anything. So that's one analogy that is used in 1.10 in purport of Prabhupada. But here's another analogy used in verse 1.1. And this analogy, it is being mentioned by Acharyas that in this war, the Kauravas will be plucked out like the weeds. You can see the grass, the weeds will grow out, and people pluck it out. So that's what we forecast in the very first verse when Dhritarashtra talks to Sanjay and asks him, what did my sons and those Pandavas do? Sons of Pandu and my sons did, right? All right. So we went so far. So we covered some ground in trying to understand things from a different Shastra. We did not use Bhagavatam. That was about formations. We used the rest of Mahabharata. But let's come back and connect the dots, right? So if you look at it, in this in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11.1.1 and in 2, the two verses, it is being mentioned that, and I'll read it out, that Lord Sri Krishna, Srila Sukdev Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, accompanied by Balaram and surrounded by the Yadu dynasty, executed the killing of many demons. Then further to remove the burden of the earth, the Lord arranged for the great battle of Kurukshetra, which suddenly erupted in violence between the Kurus and Pandavas. So now draw the parallel. So far we'll see one side of the army, trying to look at the formation of the other side, try to create their own formations, right? It's pitted against each other. Well, the reality is, it's not Pandavas versus Kauravas that were really fighting the Mahabharata war. They were just merely instruments. It is actually Krishna who had come to relieve the burden of the earth, right? And from that perspective, the entire Mahabharata Kurukshetra scene is actually a view, a formation, an arrangement that Krishna did. And that's what Bhagavatam is telling us in that 11.1.1. And it's amazing how you connect the dots from a viewer to say a real love Leela viewer. So this is a Leela view of how Krishna had arranged this formation so the earth's burden can be lightened. In fact, the second verse says, because the sons of Pandu were arranged by the numerous offenses of the enemies, such as duplicitous gambling, verbal insults, the seizing of Draupadi's hair, and other many other cruel transgressions, the Supreme Lord engaged those Pandavas as the immediate cause, Nimitta Matra, to execute his will. On the pretext of the Battle of Kurukshetra, Lord Krishna arranged for all the kings who were burdening the earth to assemble with their armies on opposite sides of the battlefield. And when the Lord killed them through the agency of war, the earth was relieved of its burden. Right? So it's actually the viewer physically is arranged by the commanders Bhima, Bhishma, who are fighting Yudhishthira, Duryodhana. What is really happening behind the scenes? It's Krishna against the evil forces that are prevalent at that time on earth. That really was the viewer. So here's the insight that we got from Bhagavatam from this. And it's also mentioned in Bhagavatam 3.9.41. As a good non-violent man, Arjuna did not want to fight with his kinsmen, but when he understood that Krishna wanted the fight and he had arranged it at Kurukshetra, he gave up his own satisfaction and fought for the satisfaction of the Lord. Okay, so that covers the first section. You got some insight from Bhagavatams. And I'll stop here and I'll just ask if anyone has any example of a practical example of where we do these things in real life, where we create a formation to achieve an objective. Anyone? It could be spiritual, it could be material. One example that comes to my mind is when Srila Prabhupada was here, right? And he was trying to get these book distribution done. Then at that point of time, Sankirtan armies would be pitted against each other and try to win the war. Obviously, it's a spiritual war, and by definition, spiritual war means they're doing something positive, not trying to kill each other, but they're still trying to beat the other party, right? And coincidentally, ironically, rather fortunately, our dear Vesika Maharaj was also part of one of these Sankirtan parties, right? And they were trying to compete and see, is the LA party winning or our party winning, his party winning. But really, if you look at it, the formation is not LA party versus these other traveling books, Sankirtan party and other things. It was really Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's army, Prabhupada's army, trying to go and win the war against Maya. So that was the view. So as a practical example of how this preparation for war manifested in real life not so far back. And we still do it, right? We're trying to become the number one in the world as the best book distribution center. ISV Ki Jai. Right. So now we'll go to the second section. Unless someone wants to stop and ask questions, please do so. I'll try to hurry up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Sorry.
Thank you for the session, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Your name, please?
Kautukarnava Das.
Oh, Hari Bol, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. All those people.
Pranam Deshna. I really like the division of the sections, Prabhu, how you explained that the first chapter is divided into different sections. And I also like the example of the vyuhas, and how different vyuhas are used for different purposes. One practical example I can think of is that when in Krishna consciousness we have this challenge to balance our sadhana and our work, then we take help from the mentors. So one of the things that helped me really um, during so my job search before I got a job was that my mentor suggested me to wake up early and complete my rounds, maybe half of them, and then go to bed. So I am thinking that is one of the ways to counteract Maya.
That's so right, Prabhuji. You mentioned that. That's a formation that you did in your war against Maya. Very wonderful. Prabhuji, I agree with that. Actually, I also started doing that. I'm the most foreign person. It was so difficult for me. And for me, there's a problem that I take a lot of time in the bathroom. So the big problem is ISKCON all over. 4:30 is when they start Mangalarti, and how early I wake, I cannot wake 1 hour before that. So I also did something recently, something similar, and I'm also trying to complete all my rounds quickly. So thank you for sharing that, Prabhuji. Good. Thank you, Prabhuji. So we'll go on to the second section now. Is that all, Prabhuji?
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I had a reflection on your beautiful lecture. Thank you for teaching us and for your beautiful presentation so far. It reminded me of Mangala Arti in the morning. I remember I had no idea how to dance or how to sing or nothing, but I remember how the devotees, how they got so ecstatic, and they hold you by the arm and they make this formation. I don't know what it's called, but during the Mangal Arti, they during the Guru Puja, they make a this formation holding hands and they start dancing and then you start doing circles and it reminded me how the battlefield, how they have this formation, but also when we dance, we make this beautiful formation and it makes it like nothing could bring you down, you know.
Right, Prabhu. That's so correct. Actually, that reminds me, because what happened is when I started my Krishna consciousness, I thought I was the best dancer, jumping around and doing things. And then I figured out I'm an old man of 48 or 46 that time, and I could only be a hero for 1 or 2 minutes. And after that, I will be all sweaty. And I realized that devotees never tire. What is the secret of success? Of course, Krishna is there. But I was wondering how these new devotees, they have not really done that much of bhakti yet. How are they getting the power? The reality is what you just mentioned. Because they are doing together, they don't have to exert themselves that much. But it still looks so beautiful because things were done in together. Sung, like your sung kirtan, this is called sung nitya, sung dancing. And it looks beautiful. It doesn't take too much of energy. And it's a good formation, keeps you alive for much longer time. Very well mentioned, Prabhuji. Very applicable. Thank you, Prabhuji. Your name, Prabhuji?
Jose. My name's Jose. Jose.
Oh, Jose. Oh, Jose. I couldn't hear you, Prabhuji. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you. So, okay. So with that, we can go on to the next part, signs of victory. So verse number 14 to 20 talks about signs of victory. And specifically 14 to 18 is where what is being mentioned is, so I'll read out the translation. On the other side, so verse 14 says, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Text 15. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya, and then Arjuna blew his Devadatta, and then Bhima, the voracious eater. You see him in the more here? Here? He blew his Pondra, and then we have Sahadev and Nakul blew Sughosha and Mani Pushpak, and I think this is from Yudhishthira and Vijay. And this 6 conch shells from the Pandava side was blown after, I think, Bhishma blew his. Is that true, Name? I think Bhishma blew it first. I don't remember who blew first. But anyway, it is said that when these 6 blew, the conch shells, right? The Kauravas' hearts were shattered. And this is being said over there, that the blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious. Vibrating both in the sky and the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. So it is said that when Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhan blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by Pandava's party. So, and Prabhupada mentions, one who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. So while that looks very right, and yes, Pandavas had taken shelter of Krishna, and that's why they were not fearing. But think about it. If you like an analyst, try to go deep into it, say, fine, Pandavas are with Krishna, so they are fearless. But why should Kaurava's heart get shattered? There's a logical gap there. You have to fill that gap. And in this section now, we'll try to solve that gap using Bhagavatam. So basically the question that we're trying to find out is it not a conch versus a conch? Bhishma's conch and all the Kauravas' conch versus all the Pandavas' conch? What is so different? Why didn't why did Kaurava's army's heart get shattered? So for this, we will dig into the story of just one of the conches from Pandava's army, and that conch is Panchajanya. Okay, so let's find out how did Krishna conch come into place. So we read Bhagavatam 10, 45, 30, and then go on to 36. This is the story when from Vrindavan, Krishna had come and they killed Kamsa and he met his real parents. And at that point of time, Ugrasen was made the king and he was sent to study. Krishna as a kid, right? He used to study, go to school, right? So you cannot do homeschooling all the time. You have to go to school too, right, Aname? So he was sent to Sandeep Nemani's ashram, and there he did one. They learned 64 hours in 64 days, and here is Sandeep Nemani teaching both of them. And Krishna is so meticulously studying true Leela, and here's Balram thinking, telling Sandeep Nemani, get over with it. Right? No, he's not saying that, but they're trying to get over it. And as once they did that, oh, can you keep that? Okay, so actually we can just go back a little bit and then just talk about it. So when this teaching was getting over, it is said the spiritual master Sandipani was satisfied with the submissive behavior. So I'm reading the translation number 33 from 1045. And sorry, because of the slides, I'm not showing that, but I'm just reading it out. It's just a few lines. Was satisfied with their submissive behavior, and thus he taught them the entire Vedas, together the 6 corollaries and the Upanishads. He also taught them the Dhanurveda, most confidential secrets, standard book of law, etc., etc., the methods of logic, Nyaya, philosophical debate, sixfold science of politics. O king, the best of persons, Krishna and Balarama, being themselves the original promulgators of all varieties of knowledge, could easily assimilate this. So they satisfied their spiritual master by offering them Guru Dakshina. So now we'll go to the Guru Dakshina part. So when the Guru Dakshina was offered, this verse number 37, as you can see on the left side, 10, 45, 37, that's a typical Bhagavatam thing. So I'm not written it as SB because BG is always two elements and SB is always 3 elements. So between 37 and 39 verse, Krishna and Balram are talked about. So in verse 37, it is being mentioned, O king, the learned Brahmana Sandipani carefully considered 2 lords' glorious and amazing qualities and their superhuman intelligence. So he's thinking, what Guru Dakshina should I ask? Then after consulting with his wife, he chose as his remuneration the return of his young son who had died in the ocean of Prabhasa. So Krishna said, so be it. Replies those 2 great chariot warriors of limitless might. And they at once mounted a chariot and set off for Prabhasa, where they reached their palace. They walked up the shore and sat down. In a moment, and this is what is happening now in this scene, the deity of the ocean, Varuna, recognizing them to be the supreme lords, approached them with the offerings of tribute. The Supreme Lord Krishna addressed the Lord of the ocean. Let the son of my Guru be presented at once. The one you see here with the mighty waves. Okay. So in this scene, there 2 are talking. The demigod, he recognizes Krishna as the Lord, and that is what they're talking. And so what happens after that? Go to next slide. So in verse number 40, it is said, the ocean replied, O Lord Krishna, it was not I who abducted him. So although the son was lost inside that ocean, but a demoniac descendant of Diti named Panchjana, who travels in the water in the form of a conch. Indeed, text 41 says, the ocean said, that demon is taken away. Hearing this, Lord Krishna entered the ocean, found Panchjana, and killed him. So you see this conch over here? Inside that, this is the demon that was living, and Krishna went and fought him and killed him. But the Lord did not find the boy within the demon's belly. Okay. Then what happened after that? So the next slide. So basically, this is the Panchjana conch demon getting killed. And at that point of time, text 42-44 says, over here, it goes all the way to 49. Lord Janardana took the conch shell that had grown around the demon's body and went back to the chariot. So that's how he got the Panchjana shell. So far we know how Krishna got the conch. We still don't know what was the secret of that shattering. So we'll get to that. Okay, so that we just don't lose our focus. Then he proceeded to Samyamani. Samyamani, what is that? It is the beloved capital of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. And upon arriving there with Lord Balarama, he loudly blew his conch shell. Yamaraj, who keeps the conditioned souls in check, his duty, right? All persons, all people who live, all living beings who leave their body here, especially human beings, they will go there. Yamaraj will keep a count, Chitragupta, and then based on that, he'll go to heaven, hell. So Anyway, so he loudly blew his conch shell, and Yamraj, who keeps the conditioned souls in check, came as soon as he heard the resounding vibration. So it has been mentioned that the sound vibration is resounding. It's not normal. Okay, so what? Let's go and do it. Yamraj elaborately worshipped the two lords with great devotion. So this is Yamraj coming up with all the people and carrying all the paraphernalia of worshipping him. Okay, and he addressed Lord Krishna who lives in everyone's heart. O Supreme Lord Vishnu, what shall I do for you? And Lord Balram, who are playing the part of ordinary humans. So in text 45, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, suffering the bondage of his past activity, my spiritual master's son was brought here to you. O great king, obey my command and bring this boy to me without delay. So Krishna is really throwing his weight there. He's not acting like a typical human being there, because he knows that this demigod knows who I am. So with human beings, Krishna hides himself, right? Anyway, Sri Ram said, so be it, tathastu, and brought forth as the Guru's sons. Then those two most exalted Yadus presented the boy to the spiritual master and said to him, please select another boon, because they are heroes, right? It's not like I'm done and you are done. The spiritual master said, my dear boys, you two have completely fulfilled the disciple's obligation to reward his spiritual master. Indeed, with disciples like you, what further desires could a guru have? So Sandeep Muni is also Muni, right? He's not like an ordinary teacher. So he's a self-satisfied person, but then a problem happened in his life, and Krishna solved it. So he's satisfied now. And he said, oh heroes, now please return home. May your fame sanctify the world, and may the Vedic hymns be ever fresh in your minds, both in this life and the next. Thus, receiving the Guru's permission to leave, the two lords returned to the city on the chariot, which moved as swiftly as the wind and resounded like a cloud. Right? So far, we saw the entire story from Bhagavatam. We got to know that the conch that Krishna had, it is his eternal conch, by the way, from spiritual world. But in this Leela, that Krishna was playing this role for 125 years on earth at the border of Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga, he got it through Leela of going and killing the demon, conch demon, right? Well, so what still makes it different? We so far knew that his conch was resounding in vibration. Well, here comes the crux. In 1045, 42, 44, in the purport, Prabhupada mentioned something really amazing. He's saying the conch shell the Lord took from Panchjana, which is called Panchjanya, is the same one he resounded at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. According to the Acharyas, Panchjana had become a demon in a way similar to that of Jay and Vijay. That means he was a great person too. Okay. In other words, though appearing in the form of a demon, he was actually a devotee of the Lord. The Skanda Purana, Avanti Khand, describes the wonderful things that happened when Lord Krishna sounded his conch shell. And here comes the most important part. The hell, known as Ashipatravana, lost the sharp sword-like leaves on its trees. The trees have leaves, it is very sword-like, and the jiva has to go against it and get smashed. And the hell named Raurava became free of his Ruru beasts. These Ruru beasts will come and eat the jivas who have done a lot of sins. The Bhairava is another hell. So there are many hells, right? You know, these 14 lokas are there, the bottom part. So the Bhairava hell lost its fearfulness. So people become very afraid over there. And all cooking stopped in the Kumbhipaka hell. You know what happens in the Kumbhipaka hell? In the Kumbhipaka hell, the jiva is put into oil and fried. And that's what happens over there. So anyway, so it is said all of these things stopped. Why? Because Krishna was not in any of these Patala, Sutala, or whatever these hell places were. Blue is conch shell, right? So imagine how powerful it is. So we came back to the question, is it a mere conch? It is not a mere conch, something amazing. It is a spiritual element. Similarly, the Skanda Purana further states, Papa Shaya Tataha Sarve Vimukta Naraka Nara Padam Avayam Asadya. So the sinful reactions eradicated. All the inhabitants of hell attained liberation and approached the spiritual world. Can you imagine? No Krishna consciousness, no pious deeds. They are all in hell. But because they were so lucky that Krishna's vibrations, conscious vibration reached them, they were promoted to the spiritual world. That is the power of Krishna's Panchadana. So it is not a conch, it is the conch. And when the conch is there, all other conches which are aligned towards it, like a magnet, you know how iron is there, It has molecules on all sides, and you rub a magnet on it, and rub a magnet on it, and rub on it, and slowly all the molecules become aligned, and then that piece of iron becomes another magnet. It has the power to attract. Similarly, jivas on this earth are actually aligned towards different goals: sense enjoyment, little bit of yoga, want to make money, this, that, and then Krishna comes and he aligns everyone like a molecule and a magnet, right? And all of these molecules become aligned. And suddenly, every one of those conch, the Pondrak from Bhima, and the Devdatta from Arjuna, and I've forgotten the Sughosh and the Mani Pushpak, and I forgot the Yudhishthira one. All of these 5, 6, right, along with Krishna, became so pronounced that they could actually shatter the hearts of Kauravas, even though Kauravas had such a big army. And that, dear devotees, is the crux of this section of Bhagavad Gita, of why the signs of victory were only on the Pandava side, even both sides were playing the nagaras and drums and trumpets. So with that, I think we can end this section, and I will just stop here, and please request, dear devotees, if you have any insights or realizations or any practical examples to share, this is a good time now. Please enlighten me and everyone else. Actually, I'm also thinking, I do know that when not Pandava's time, but later on, right, when the war is to be fought, then what would happen is that there used to be these people who would hold the flag post, and that would be that kingdom's flag. And based on that, the other army is seeing, because they cannot see, right? There's no satellite or something saying, oh, the armies are here or the army is here, and this army is winning or that army is winning. So based on where that flag is, the army, the cavalry, and the militia men would get the courage to say, oh, we are winning because our flag has reached that far in. So the person who holds the flag is the one who is really motivating and trying to make people rise up to the occasion and lead the war or fight the war in the best of the spirits. And if so, what will happen is the opposite army will make sure that this flag post person doesn't go very far. But with him, there are many proxies. If they try to hit this other one, there will be people who protect him, and someone else will take that flag, and then they'll keep running. So the flag is a sign of current state of victory or current status. So I think that is a practical example I could think of. If anyone else has any other example, please speak up. Yeah, otherwise we can move on. Okay, so the verse 121 to 126 are about Krishna being Bhakta Vatsala. So why is Krishna called Bhakta Vatsala here? Well, it so happens that in this verse, in the verse 124, but really starts with the verse 21 to 22, and I will read out the translation for them. Arjuna said, O infallible one, Achyutya, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight, with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Verse about, so this 21 and 22. And 24 said, Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharat, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. So here is something to start pondering about. We'll get to the crux, but let's look at it. Yes, Krishna had agreed to be a charioteer for Arjuna. So what? Krishna had also agreed to be a son of Yashoda, right? But still, despite that, Yashoda could not tie the rope around Krishna till Krishna allowed it to happen, right? So why, at least in this scenario, even though Krishna had agreed to it, why would this happen that Arjuna ordered and he did it right away? Especially when Krishna knew, at least in the Leela part, of course, he is Supreme Personality, he knows the other side. But when Krishna is playing Leela, he's only playing Leela. He's not acting like God unless he has to. So when he's playing Leela, he knows that this could be a decisive moment. What happens if Bhishma shoots an arrow at this point of time, right? And the conch shells have already been blown. Arjuna could get massacred over here. Of course, he's a great fighter, but now he's in the midst of army, he's not being protected by his people, right? So why did Krishna do what Arjuna asked? As if Arjuna is the driver, is the person who's calling the shots, and Krishna is a mere servant and following at it. So this verse actually leads to a concept called Bhakta Vatsala Krishna, who is very Bhakta Vatsala, Arjuna is a Bhakta, and therefore he did it. Well, that said, we have to figure out what does this term Vatsala mean. So in this section, dear devotees, we'll try to explore the concept of Vatsala, and we'll try to take the leverage of Bhagavatam. And we know that in Bhagavatam, when you go and research, we all know, yeah, Krishna devotee, Krishna takes great care. Yes, 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 yes. Coming from ISKCON, we cannot understand that. But let's see what Bhagavatam has to say about it. So if you go to vedabase.com and go to search and search for the word Vatsala, there are many search results that will come out. And I have it on my parallel copy over here. So I can just give you, there's a term called Bhaktvatsala, which has many entries. And curiously, below that, there's a term called Dharma Vatsala. And in Dharma Vatsala, there are two entries. And one of them is what we'll pick up. It is said, Dharma Vatsala very much fond, Dharma Vatsala, very much fond of religious principles. So what we will do today now in this section is we'll try to investigate this Bhagavatam story pastime about the term Dharma Vatsala and try to connect it to the Bhakta Vatsala and try to understand what is it about this Vatsala aspect that made Krishna be literally a puppet in the hands of his devotee. Okay, so with that, let's go on to this story. So here, dear devotees, is a story of Krishna Bhaktvatsala and Shiva Dharmvatsala. This comes from Bhagavatam 4:24, 16 to 23, and is a story about the Prachetas. So there are certain verses. I'll read out the translation for you. King Prachinbari begot 10 children in the womb of Shatadruti. All of them were equally endowed with religiosity, and all of them were known as Prachetas. Text 14. When all of these Prachetas were ordered by their father to marry and beget children, they all entered the ocean and practiced austerities and penances for 10,000 years. Thus they worshipped the master of all austerity, the supreme personality of Godhead. Text 15. When all the sons of Prachinbari left home to execute austerities, they met Lord Shiva, who out of great mercy instructed them about the absolute truth. So now is the part coming in. Here are the Prachetas. They are very religious and austere. They're not praying to Lord Shiva. They are doing their duty, which their father has said, and Lord Shiva pops out from nowhere. Why? So that is the first thing that we need to watch out. And he will go on and read it. So Vidura asked Maitreya, my dear Brahmana, why did the Prachetas meet Lord Shiva in this way? Please tell me how the meeting happened, how Lord Shiva became very pleased with them, and how he instructed them. Certainly such talks are important, and I wish that you please be merciful upon me and describe them. Text 17. The great sage Vidura continued, O best of the Brahmanas, it is very difficult for living entities engaged within this material body to have personal contact with Lord Shiva. Even great sages who have no material attachments do not contact him despite their always being absorbed in meditation to attain his personal contact. Text 18. Lord Shiva, the most powerful demigod, second only to Lord Vishnu, is self-sufficient. Although he is dirty to aspire for the material world, actually, should we actually show that wordings? Because I think, okay, let's me read it. If it becomes difficult, and we can show it. So where were we? Yep. So although he has nothing to aspire for in the material world, for the benefit of those in the material world, he is always busily engaged and is accompanied by his dangerous energies like the goddess Kali and goddess Durga. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, because of their pious nature, all the sons of Prachinbari very seriously accepted the words of their father with heart and soul. And with these words on their heads, they went towards the west to execute the father's order. While traveling, the purchaser happened to see a great reservoir of water. This is the reservoir of water that they're seeing. The water of this lake was so calm and quiet. So you can see that these 10 brothers are there and these lotuses are growing. And the water over there is so beautifully aligned, it's crystal clear, or it was really calm and blue, right? Blue is a very soothing color. So water of this lake was so calm and quiet that it seemed like the mind of a great soul, and its inhabitants, the aquatics, appeared very peaceful and happy to be under the protection of such a watery reservoir. Text 21. In that great lake, there were different types of lotus flowers. Some of them were bluish, some of them were red, some of them grew at night, some in the day, and some like the Indivara lotus flower in the evening. Combined together, the lotus flowers filled the lake so that the lake appeared to be a great mine of such flowers. Consequently, on the shores there were swans and cranes and chakravaks and karandavas and other beautiful birds standing out. In other words, the environment is very spiritual, very pious, very calm, very soothing. So that's what we mentioned over here. There are various trees and creepers on all sides of the lake. There are mad bumblebees humming around. The trees appear to be very jolly. You can see all these trees over here, right? They were very jolly. Um, and maybe I can understand them, but because you're great devotees, you can probably see how jolly they are. And due to the sweet humming of the bumblebees and the saffron which was contained in the lotus flower, these lotus flowers, they have saffron, which was being thrown into the air. These all created such an atmosphere that appeared as though a festival was taking place there. The son of the king became very much amazed when they heard vibrations for various drums and kettle drums, along with other orderly music sounds present to the ear. So everything is calm and quiet, right? And suddenly they can hear some sound and music coming out. And where's that music coming? So let's figure that out. There you go. Lord Shiva is coming out. And when he's coming out, all of his associates who are playing different bugles and different instruments and clapping and thundering and musical things all going around, right? So the Pachetas were very fortunate. So this is verse 24, 25, and all the way to 32 are talking, saying, the Pachetas were fortunate to see Lord Shiva, the chief of the demigods, emerging from the water with his associates. His bodily luster was like molten gold. His throat was bluish. He had 3 eyes, which looked very mercifully upon his devotees. He was accompanied by many musicians who were glorifying him. As soon as the Prachetas saw Lord Shiva, they immediately offered their obeisances. Right? You can see all of them. They're offering their obeisances or talking about his glories and raising their hand, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then immediately offered their obeisances in great amazement and fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord. Text 26. Lord Shiva became very pleased with the Prachetas because generally Lord Shiva is the protector of pious persons and persons of gentle behaviors, and therefore definitely Prachetas qualified, right? Being very much pleased with the princess, he began to speak as follows. Lord Shiva said, you all are the sons of King Prachin Barhi, and I wish all good fortune to you. I also know what you're going to do, and therefore I am visible to you just to show my mercy upon you. Lord Shiva continued, any person who is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the control of everything, material as well as the living entity, is actually very dear to me. A person who executes his occupational duty properly for 100 births become qualified to occupy the post of Brahma. And if he becomes more qualified, he can approach Lord Shiva. A person who is directly surrendered to Lord Krishna or Vishnu is in unalloyed devotional service is immediately promoted to the spiritual planets. I think I'm the only person reading this. So let me get this up so everyone can see what I'm talking about. Which verse am I on? 29, right? So at least from verse number 30 over here. You are all devotees of the Lord, and as such, I appreciate that you are respectable as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Everyone can see this now, right? I think so. Okay. I know in this way that the devotees also respect me, and I am dear to them. Thus, no one can be as dear to the devotees as I am. Now I shall chant one mantra, which is not only transcendental, pure, and auspicious, but is the best prayer for anyone who is aspiring to attain the ultimate goal of life. When I chant this mantra, please hear it carefully and attentively. And now, this is like we talk about this term called Guru Mantra. So we think Guru Mantra is where we are glorifying the Guru. Well, that is the Guru Pranam Mantra. But Guru Mantra is a term that is used to say, here is the crux of things. So now Lord Shiva is going to give the crux of how to achieve the objective. And what is it? The great sage Bhattacharya continued. Out of his causeless mercy, the exalted personality Lord Shiva, a great devotee of Lord Narayan, continued to speak of the king's son who was standing with folded hands. And what did he say? So we'll go to the next slide. But yeah, I'll go to the Prancha board. But so here's the Lord Shiva telling these Prachetas about the glories of the Lord. And we'll read out the words. We'll come back to the slide later. So text 33. Lord Shiva addressed the Supreme Personality of Godhead with the following prayer. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, all glories unto you. You're the most exalted of all self-realized souls. Since you're always auspicious for the self-realized, I wish that you be auspicious for me. You are worshipable by virtue and all perfect instructions you give. You're the super soul. Therefore, I offer my obeisances unto you as the supreme living being. My Lord, You're the origin of the creation by virtue of the lotus flower, which sprouts from your navel. You're the supreme control of the senses and the sense objects, Indriyas. You are also the all-pervading Vasudeva. You're the most beautiful, and because of your self-illuminated existence, you're not disturbed by the six forms of transformation. So from this text 33 all the way to 70s is where Lord Shiva, who is the topmost Vaishnava, is glorifying the Lord. So in interest of time, we'll just go on to the end of this prayer. And here is what Lord Shiva said towards the last three verses. So we'll go back to the slide. A devotee of Lord Krishna, so text 74, whose mind is always absorbed in him, who with great attention and reverence chants this stotra prayer, will achieve the greatest perfection of life without delay. So that's one part. Next part, text 76. Although rendering, so I'll highlight this. Oops, what happened? Yeah. So something will happen without delay, right? Next verse says, 76th verse, really. Although rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worshipping Him are very difficult, if one vibrates or simply reads this stotra prayer, composed and sung by me, he will very easily be able to invoke the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there you see, this really is getting to the crux. And last verse in this section, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the dearmost objective of all auspicious benedictions. A human being who sings this song by me can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a devotee, being fixed in the Lord's devotional service, can acquire what he wants from the Supreme Lord. Now, can we connect the dots back? Let's go back to the presenter board and see what happened. So we had started over here in our journey for this section by figuring out that what is it that caused Krishna to be Bhakt Vatsala. And that process in investigating the search for Vatsala, and this is what Shiva is telling, how to acquire anything from the Lord, how to make him Vatsala, right? So if you get a spiritual master like Lord Shiva, and we are very fortunate to have some equivalent or some great ones in ISKCON now, and you pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so you've got a perfect combination, and you're the perfect recipient of mercy, religious, austere. So this combination is very potent, right? So in basically with this potent combination, what results is verse number 77. What we said is, the same last time, repeat it again. But being fixed in the Lord's devotional service can acquire what he wants from the Supreme Lord. In brief, the Lord becomes the Kalpataru, Kalpavraksha, right? Desire tree. And whatever this Bhakta will desire will be granted to him through the various agencies of the Lord. So really, Lord becomes a puppet at the hand of his extremely surrendered, extremely pious, extremely well-oriented piece of magnet molecule, that kind of a devotee. And that, dear devotees, ties in back to what a Vatsala is and how to make Krishna Bhakt Vatsala. To be the perfect, for doing that, you have to be the perfect Bhakta. And for doing that, we need the perfect Guru. So that is how you connect the dots back. So with that, we can end this section with one small little thing. There is the mention of an analogy. As I said, Prabhupada gives a lot of analogies and similes. So here is an analogy about the word Gudakesha that is put for the name of Arjuna. And Gudakesha means one who has conquered sleep. And Prabhupada says that in his purport for 124, which is a verse over here, that Gudakesha means sleep also means ignorance. So Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep. You see this guy over here sleeping, he's still thinking about Krishna. A devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, forms, qualities, and pastimes. Thus, a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness or samadhi. So we end this section by figuring out the Vatsala part, and also a Gudakesh, which is an example, analogy from Bhagavad Gita purports, ties in back to how a person is able to remember Krishna, Smaralam, all times. So with that, we can end this section. I think we're getting to the top of the hour as well. If dear devotees, if you have any good example to share, a practical example, any insights into this section or any other section, please speak up now.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the example of Prachin Bari and Parchetas. So I really liked how you connected the Vatsala, that how there should be a combination. One should be religious, austere. One should have a bona fide guru, and then when we worship Krishna, then we can expect that Krishna will give us mercy. So I see that there's example of Dhruv Maharaj. When Dhruv Maharaj wanted a big kingdom, so he followed his mother, and then he got a mantra from Narad Muni, and then he could get his wish fulfilled in 6 months. So that I can
Beautiful
remember.
example, we really appreciate. Thank you, we. Yes, that is so true. That the poor combination there. And we are so lucky that we have literally that combination. Prabhupada coming as a Senapati, the best possible lineage, the best possible, most munificent incarnation of Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the best possible time, the golden age of Kali Yuga. So we are very lucky to be born here and able to take advantage of this. So thank you, Prabhu. I think we're getting top of the hour. So we covered one section of one part of Bhagavad Gita chapter 1. So just taken as an example to be able to see how we can connect Bhagavatam with Bhagavad Gita and search for words and then be able to tie the two together. Otherwise, we'll always tend to think they're two separate books. Yes, they have common philosophy. So what? How do I tie? You know, when you tie the shoelace, you take it from one side and then take it to the other side and it crisscrosses. That crisscrossing was the attempt over here. Apologize if I was not able to say things properly or said some things in error. That's all my mistake. If I said something that sounded okay or met your expectations, it's coming from the Guru Parampara. With that, we can end today. Thank you. And we have 1 minute, I think, before we end. So I do request one thing from dear devotees, if you can unmute yourself and can all chant 11 times Hare Krishna Mahamantra together. And the reason for that is that COVID is really spreading and it is affecting everyone, including devotees. And the request is that if you all chant together, we can try to please Krishna and request him that, hey Krishna, save us from this big trouble that is kind of coming onto our planet and bothering us now. So 11 times Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and then I think we can end over there. Is that okay? Okay, we can we unmute Balaram, please?
Yes, Prabhu.
Can we unmute ourselves, everyone, and then we can all chant together?
Sure, Prabhu.
Very well. Okay, so we'll just chant 11 times on the fingers as Vashika Mara says. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Rama,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Hare
Rama.
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram Hare Ram
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna 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 Hare
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 Rama,
Rama Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Krishna Hare
Krishna
Hare.
Krishna Krishna Hare
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 Rama,
Hare
Hare
Ram Hare
Rama,
Ram
Rama
Ram
Rama, Hare
Ram
Hare.
Hare Hare
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna
Krishna
Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Hare Rama,
Ram,
Hare
Ram
Rama,
Ram,
Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare Hare.
Hare Ram,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram, Ram, Hare
Rama
Hare,
Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Krishna,
Hare Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram,
Hare Hare.
Ram Ram, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Krishna,
Rama
Hare
Rama, Hare
Krishna,
Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna,
Ram
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Rama,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Rama,
Krishna Krishna,
Rama
Hare Hare,
Rama, Hare Hare.
Ram
Hare
Ram
Hare,
Ram Ram,
Hare
Hare Hare,
Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Krishna,
Rama
Hare
Rama,
Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Ram,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Rama,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Rama
Ram, Ram
Rama,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Ram, Hare
Hare
Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Rama,
Hare,
Rama, Hare Hare. And last time loudly,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
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 Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Hare.
Hare,
Hare
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 Rama,
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 Hare
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 Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare.
Hare
Hare
Hare. So we'll do two more things now, quickly. We did not say Prabhupada Mahamantra. We should have done it at the start, but we can start with Mangalachar Press. We say that, and then after that we'll say Vancha Kalpa and we can end. So let's say the Prabhupada Mahamantra. Namam Vishnu Padaya
Padaya Krishna Prasthaya
Can you close the door?
Bhakti Vedanta
Srimate
Swamiti
Goswami
Namane
Namane
Namaste
Prabhupada
Saraswate
Saraswati
Gauravani
Devi
Pacharine
Gaurani
Nirvishesh
Nirvishesh
Paschate Deshatarne. Hey dear Srila Prabhupada, thank you for coming and giving us this opportunity. Please bless us so we can see. Please also help us in these troubling times, COVID. Please help all your disciples and the grand disciples, entire three. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for considering our request. Hare Krishna. We'll end with Vanchakalpa now. Thank you, dear devotees. Vanchakalpa. All glories to all assembled devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Parampara, all glories to Bhakti Vinod Thakur, all glories to Gauranitai and Radha Krishna. Hari Bol. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Balram. Thank you for all the crew who helped and all. Thank you for all devotees who joined today. Hare Krishna.
Vijaya Damodara Prabhu ki
Ki Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.